Peace be upon you, and welcome to a new episode. Today, we will tell one of the most heartbreaking stories in Egypt, the story of a little girl named Azar, a girl who was just starting her life as a bride, but her life ended in a horrific way that you can't even imagine. This story took place in the village of Al-Fayma, in the center of Al-Fath, Asyut Governorate, on February 15th, 2025, when the groom, Muhammad, who was supposed to be Azhar's support in her new life, killed her in a brutal way, severing her head from her body. We will tell the story from the beginning, from the day Azar was born, her life, Muhammad's life, how they met, how they married, and how doubts about her behavior led to this horrific crime. The story is full of details, and we will try to live every moment with you, so get ready and stay with us. And before we begin our story, don't forget to like and share the episode so it reaches as many people as possible. Without going into too many details, let's dive into the depths of our story. Azar was born in late 2008, so when the crime occurred in February 2025, she was 16 years old and a few months, not yet 17. Azar was a very ordinary girl, just like any other girl in the village of Al-Fayma. This village is small, located in the heart of Upper Egypt, where the people live simple lives, farming the land, raising livestock, and customs and traditions govern everything. Azar came from a middle-class family. Her father, Ismail, was a farmer who worked on his land from morning until sunset, and her mother, Fatima, was a housewife who took care of the children and the home. Azar had brothers and sisters, and she was one of the younger ones in the family. Since she was a child, Azar was known for being calm, not liking trouble, always listening to her parents, and dreaming like any girl her age of growing up, getting married, and having her own home and family. At home, Azar was like honey. Her mother Fatima would always say about her, "She's my daughter who listens to me. She never makes me upset." Azar loved to help her mother with housework, cook meals, clean, and sometimes she would go with her father, Ismail, to the field to help him with tasks like harvesting crops or watering the land. She was an active girl, always smiling, and the neighbors loved her because she was respectful and didn't talk much. At school, Azar learned like any girl in the village. But like many girls in Upper Egypt, she didn't continue her education for long. She completed the first year of secondary school, and then her parents decided she should stay home. The reason? Like it often happens in villages, when a girl grows up, she has to learn household chores and prepare for marriage. Azar wasn't upset by this decision because she saw it as a natural part of life. And all the girls in Al-Fayma were the same. Azar spent her days at home, helping her mother, learning how to make stuffed vegetables and baked goods. And sometimes she would go to the neighbors' houses where they would gather, talk, and laugh. Azar loved these gatherings because she felt like she was part of the small community in the village. She dreamed that when she grew up, she would be like her mother, a skilled housewife, and make a warm home just like theirs. But like any girl her age, she also dreamed of marriage, the white dress, and the day she would become a bride. She always heard from her older sisters about their wedding days, and she imagined herself on that day, wearing a beautiful dress, with everyone congratulating her. Let's now turn to Muhammad, the groom who would later become Azhar's husband. Muhammad was born in 1992, meaning in February 2025, he was around 33 years old. Muhammad was a young man from the same village, Al-Fayma, and he was known for being very religious. If you asked anyone in the village about Muhammad, they would say, "He's a man who never misses a prayer, always goes to the mosque, and respects both the young and the old. Muhammad was from a large family in the village. His father, Hassan, owned agricultural land, and Muhammad worked with him on the farm. He was a strong-built young man who had been working in agriculture since he was young, and he loved his work very much. People saw Muhammad as a reliable man, meaning if anyone needed help, Muhammad would be the first to run and assist. Muhammad lived a simple life, like most of the young men in the village. From a young age, he worked in the fields, helped his father, and saved money to build his future. He had high morals and always respected people. His mother, Amina, was very proud of him and would always say, "Muhammad is my support, the man of the house." Muhammad loved sitting with his friends in the village, talking about farming, news, and sometimes playing dominoes or walking by the irrigation canal. But Muhammad had bigger ambitions than that. He wanted to marry, have a home and a family, and raise children with good morals and faith. In his 20s, Muhammad was focused on his work, helping his family, and saving money. He wasn't in a hurry to marry because he wanted to choose a wife who was suitable for him. When he reached the age of 30, people in the village began to ask him, "Muhammad, aren't you planning to make us happy?" He would laugh and reply, "Not yet, when God blesses me with a good girl." Muhammad had specific qualities in mind for the woman he wanted to marry. She had to come from a good family, be respectable, religious, and be from the village so she could be close to his family. He saw marriage as a big step, and he wanted to choose wisely. One day, around September of 2024, one of Muhammad's relatives, named Ali, said to him, "What do you think of Azar, your cousin?" Azar was indeed related to Muhammad as his distant cousin, but in rural Upper Egypt, these family connections are very strong. At first, Muhammad said, "But Azar is still young. She's only 16. But Ali and Muhammad's family began to convince him. They told him, "She's a very good girl, respectful, quiet, and she will be your wife and make you happy." Muhammad started to think about it, especially since Azar was known to be a respectful girl, and her parents, Ismail and Fatima, were good people and well known in the village. At this point, we need to pause and talk about something important. In Egypt, especially in Upper Egypt, early marriage for young girls still happens, even though the law states that a girl must be 18 to marry. However, in the villages, people often engage in informal marriages, meaning a marriage contract that isn't officially registered, and it's based solely on the approval of both families. Azhar was not yet 17, so she couldn't marry officially. But her family and Muhammad's family agreed to an informal marriage, which would still be a legitimate marriage, meaning it would be publicly announced, with guests, decorations, and everything like a regular wedding. After thinking it over, Muhammad agreed to the marriage. In November 2024, he and his family went to Azar's house and proposed to her. Azar, like any girl her age, was happy but scared at the same time. She knew this was a big step, but at the same time she felt that Muhammad was a good man, religious, and would be a support to her. The two families agreed on everything: the dowry, the gifts, the preparations for the house, and they set the wedding date for February 14th, 2025, which was Valentine's Day, a symbolic choice because people believed this marriage would be a love story. From November 2024 to February 2025, Azhar lived in a dream. She was preparing herself, going with her mother Fatima to buy the dress, choosing the jewelry, and imagining what it would be like to be a bride. Every day she would sit with her sisters, talking about the wedding, and she would laugh as she described the white dress she had chosen. Her mother would say to her, "Azhar, you'll be like the moon on your wedding day." Azhar felt like she was living in a fairy tale, and she was waiting for the day when she would become Muhammad's wife. Muhammad was also happy, but at the same time there was something inside him. As he later mentioned in the investigation, Muhammad started to doubt Azar's morals. He didn't have proof, but he said he felt like something was wrong. People in the village were surprised when they heard this later because Azar was a quiet girl and there was nothing to suggest she was disrespectful. But Muhammad, perhaps because he was overly religious, or maybe because he was afraid of a scandal, began to sow doubts in his mind. He started thinking, if Azar isn't a respectable girl, it will be a scandal, and my honor will be lost in the village. This fear, combined with the pressure from traditions and customs, began to affect his thinking. The wedding day, February 14th, 2025, was a day that would never be forgotten in Al-Fayma. The whole village gathered, decorations were put up everywhere, livestock were slaughtered, and people were eating, drinking, and celebrating. Azar was like the moon, wearing her white dress, and Muhammad stood beside her, laughing and greeting the guests. People were congratulating them, and everyone saw this marriage as the start of a happy life. The wedding lasted late into the night, and Azar and Muhammad went to their marital home, which was a small house in the village that Muhammad had prepared with his family. The house was simple, but it was full of hope, or at least that's how people saw it. The next day, February 15th, 2025, which was supposed to be the morning after the wedding, the day when the bride becomes the queen of her new home, the catastrophe occurred. Muhammad, as he later said in the investigations, entered Azar's room at night, wanting to make sure of her virginity. In Upper Egypt, virginity is still very important in marriage, and people see it as proof of a girl's honor. Muhammad, when he entered Azar's room, felt that something was wrong. He said he found no evidence of her virginity, and that's when the doubt in his mind turned into madness. Instead of thinking rationally, like talking to Azars family or taking her to a doctor to confirm the situation, he decided to do something horrific. In the morning, while Azar was still asleep, Muhammad grabbed a knife and went to Azar, throwing her to the ground. Imagine the scene. A young girl 16 years old, a bride just the day before, waking up to find her husband hitting her and shouting, "Who did this to you? Who did this to you?" Azar didn't understand what was happening. She tried to scream, but Muhammad had already lost control. He stabbed her with the knife, and in a moment of madness, he severed her head from her body. What happened next was even more horrifying. Instead of hiding what he had done, Muhammad left the house holding Azar's head by her hair, with her blood spilling in the street. He went to the front of the house and began shouting, "People, world, this is the head of my bride on the morning after the wedding." The people in the village, when they saw the scene, froze in horror. This wasn't something that happened every day. It was a monstrous crime that shocked the entire village. A woman from the neighborhood, named Khadija, called the police, and within hours the police arrived and took Muhammad, still holding Azar's head in his hand. When the police arrived, they found the scene just as it was. Azar was dead, her body on the ground, and her head in Muhammad's hand. When Muhammad was asked, "What have you done?" he said, "I suspected her behavior, and I couldn't find any proof that she was a virgin." But the police, as well as the prosecutor later on, didn't believe this story. Even if Muhammad believed Azar wasn't a virgin, that still didn't give him the right to kill her, especially in such a brutal way. The prosecutor ordered an autopsy on Azar's body and tasked the forensic doctor with uncovering the truth. The forensic report, which came out on February 20th, 2025, confirmed that Azar was indeed a virgin, and there was no evidence to suggest she had been involved with anyone before Muhammad. This left people even more confused. Did Muhammad kill Azar without any real reason? Let's go back a bit and see how Muhammad reached this point. As I mentioned, Muhammad was very religious, but perhaps his religiosity had a form of extremism. He believed that anything outside what he considered normal was an insult to his honor. When he entered Azhar's room and didn't find what he expected, instead of thinking rationally, suspicion took over him. In rural Upper Egypt, a scandal is a huge deal. If Muhammad had divorced Azhar the morning after their wedding, or gone to tell her family that she wasn't a virgin, it would have been a major scandal, not just for Azhar and her family, but for Muhammad and his family as well. Perhaps Muhammad feared this scandal, or maybe he felt that his honor was insulted, and so he decided to commit this horrific crime. But there is another possibility we need to consider. Perhaps Azhar, when Muhammad began shouting at her and accusing her, said something like, "I will tell my father and mother," or, "You're not a man." Maybe those words, if they were spoken, made Muhammad feel exposed and that his reputation in front of others would be shaken. In that moment, instead of calming down and thinking, anger and fear took over him, which led him to commit the crime. Of course, this is just a possibility, because there are no witnesses other than Muhammad, and he is telling the story from his own perspective. Azar's family, when they learned what had happened, was devastated. Fatima, Azar's mother, who had seen her daughter as the moon on her wedding day, fainted when she heard that her daughter had been killed. Ismail, Azar's father, who was proud to marry his daughter to a respectable man like Muhammad, felt that the world had darkened before his eyes. Azar's siblings, especially her younger sister Sarah, were in shock. The whole family was crying and screaming, unable to believe that Azar, the girl who had been laughing with them just 2 days ago, was now gone. The people in the village, though saddened by Azar's death, began to talk about the situation. Many of them blamed Muhammad, but there were also some who said that Azar might have done something to deserve it. Of course, this was unjust talk, because the forensic report proved that Azar was innocent. The case went to court, and Muhammad was officially charged with premeditated murder. In the first court session, which was on March 25, 2025, Muhammad said that he had been suspicious of Azar's behavior and that he did it to protect his honor. However, the court was not convinced by this defense, especially after the forensic report. Muhammad's lawyer, named Ahmed, tried to argue that Muhammad was in a bad psychological state and that he wasn't in his right mind at the time of the crime, but the prosecution's case was strong and they demanded the maximum penalty. After reviewing the case documents, questioning the defendant, discussing with the chief forensic doctor of Asyut, and hearing the defense and the civil claim prosecutor's arguments, the court decided to refer the defendant's case to the Grand Mufti for a legal opinion on his execution. A session was scheduled for March 18th to deliver the verdict. On the day of the session, the judge sentenced the perpetrator Muhammad to death. This story, folks, is not just about a crime. It's a story that reminds us how traditions and customs, if misunderstood, can destroy people's lives. Azar was a young girl who could have lived a long and happy life, but suspicion and extremism caused her life to end in one day. Muhammad, who was supposed to be her support, became her murderer. People in Al-Fayma are still talking about this story, trying to understand how someone like Muhammad, who was seen as religious and respectable, could do something like this. In the end, the story of Azar and Muhammad remains a painful and impactful lesson for everyone. Azar was a victim of a series of pressures and traditions that led her toward a tragic fate. A young man at the beginning of his life who was supposed to start a new journey with his wife, but the unjustified doubts planted in him by society and traditions led him to commit an unforgivable crime. In that moment when Azar was living her simple dream, her life was shattered, not because of any mistake she had made, but because of the doubt and bigotry that took over her husband's mind. What happened in this story is a direct result of traditional concepts that limit freedom and place pressures on individuals to conform to certain standards. Honor and virginity in these societies are viewed as above all else, leading some to act violently to protect their reputation. Azar's story is not just a murder, but a cry against the customs that can destroy an innocent life based on unfounded suspicions. It is essential that we reconsider these concepts and realize that violence is never the solution to any problem. Dialogue and understanding should be the foundation of relationships. Azar's story compels us to instill in our societies the idea that honor is not just a false concept, but is a behavior and respect for others. This story may have ended in tragedy, but by talking about it and reflecting on it, we hope it will help raise awareness in society about the importance of fostering real human values such as dialogue, mutual respect, and the understanding that violence is never an option. Let us always remember Azhar and let her voice be a call for all of us to bring about real change in the way we treat one another. What do you think? Did Muhammad have the right to doubt? And if he was doubtful, does that give him the right to kill her? Write your thoughts in the comments. And if this is your first time seeing the channel, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to receive all new updates. Stay tuned for the next episode. Goodbye.